Hello and welcome back to my weekly review of The Mandalorian Season 3. This week's episode is titled Guns for Hire and was written by Jon Favreau and directed by Bryce Dallas Howard. In this episode, Din and Bo are looking for the Night Owls, Bo's old Mandalorian group, when they find themselves tasked with investigating a rash of rogue droids on an independent world. This episode opens with a freighter captain being hailed by an Imperial vessel. The captain tries to butter up to the voice on the comms, but the person informs them that they aren't Imperials and can't be bought. Axe Woves identifies himself as the leader of the Night Owls and then tells the captain he's there for the captain's lover. There are Mon Calamari Prince, who the Night Owls have been hired to return to his home planet. The prince and the captain have a tearful goodbye, and then the show switches perspectives to Din and Bo-Katan. They arrive on an independent world that neither of them has ever heard of, looking for the Night Owls. They're greeted by the world's automated space traffic system, taking control of their ship and guiding them into the capital. They're then ushered onto a high-speed loop and taken to meet the planet's Duchess. The Duchess and her husband explain a bit about the planet, give a bit of backstory, and then explain that the planet is suffering from a crisis. Their converted battle droids are acting up and they want the rogue droids decommissioned forcefully. The New Republic's bureaucracy is getting in the way of them dealing with the issue themselves, and they hire Bo and Din because they're outsiders with guns. Bo and Din leave Grogu with the Duchess and go to meet with the planet's head of security. He tells them about the droids and the people's over-reliance on them, and then sends them off to meet with the Ugnaughts who worked on the droids. The Ugnaughts are unhelpful at first, but after Din starts speaking to them with respect, they offer up a list of rogue droids and where the next event is likely to occur. Din and Bo head over to the warehouse the Ugnaught pointed them to and start talking with the droid manager. Bo asks it questions while Din starts poking around and prodding at the battle droids going about their business. Eventually, one of the droids Din messes with throws him off and runs away. They chase after it and eventually destroy it. Bo searches the remains and finds a tag from a droid bar attached to it. Bo and Din head over to the bar and make a scene. Din starts threatening the bar patrons and Bo convinces the bartender to open up to them. In the back, the bartender tells them about the one drink he serves and how it causes the droid's programming to change. It thinks this is the reason the droids are going rogue, and Bo and Din head off to check. They get the remains analyzed, and during the autopsy, the assistant droid goes rogue. A little scuffle ensues that ends with Din slicing the droid in half with the darksaber, and then they find out that the drink contained nanobots that were reprogramming the rogue droids. They also find out that the culprit is the head of security. They go and arrest him, and he tries to make a scene, but Bo is having none of it. They then return him to the Duchess and receive their reward, a giant key and safe passage to the Night Owls. Bo and Din arrive to find the Night Owls sitting near their ships in a giant field. Bo challenges Axe for leadership and the two battle it out. Bo defeats him in combat, but he still won't concede leadership because she isn't the owner of the darksaber. That's when Din steps up and tells them about how he was captured, and how Bo came to save him. He gives her the darksaber and they change their minds and decide to follow her. That's it for the plot summary. Now let's talk about how much I hated this episode. It's complete filler, with the only relevant part being the last fight between Bo and Axe. The rest of the episode was completely irrelevant to the grander narrative of this season, introduces and spends time with one-dimensional characters we'll likely never see again, and tries to jam in too many different stories. It shows Din regressing as a character in a way that doesn't really make sense and fails to establish Bo as the leader in a way that feels right. Grogu is just straight up absent from the episode. The entire thing is basically a rushed buddy cop episode that fails to understand what makes a buddy cop piece interesting. Din and Bo have a dry, boring dynamic between them, with both of them serving the same thematic purpose. They don't joke around or play off of each other, instead they use this episode to contrast the differences between them, but then they ignore all of the signs that Din is a better leader and go ahead with Bo being in charge anyway. Nothing exciting happens apart from the short foot chase, the scuffle in the lab, and the fight at the end, which were all short scenes. The rest of the episode is a buddy cop style shoot, lots of jumping around from location to location, and the terrible waft of exposition dumps everywhere they go. The cast does what they can, but I can actually say for a fact that every single actor in this episode is underutilized. Bo and Din get to do next to nothing beyond interrogating people. Jack Black and Lizzo are playing goofy bit parts, but don't sing or do anything interesting. Even Christopher Lloyd, who plays the security officer, goes unused. He's literally the villain of the story, and yet he's only in 3 scenes. The one where he's introduced and the 2 where he's arrested and brought to justice. His motives are hinted at but not explored, and they cut him short of any real emotion. The rest of the cast doesn't get a chance to put any emotion into their role either. The closest anyone comes is at the beginning when the unnamed Mon Calamari and his Quarren lover are saying goodbye. No one stands out as awful, but there's nothing to these performances. Visually, the entire episode is shot on a soundstage and it's glaringly obvious. The backgrounds look flat, aren't lit properly, and stick out like a sore thumb. The visual journey is pretty boring, and the few action sequences that are there are over-edited, sped up, chopped up messes that appear subpar when compared to the rest of the season. Sound-wise, the music is almost non-existent in this episode. More often than not, they let the music fade away so that characters can talk uninterrupted, and the only times music makes an appearance is during action sequences or dramatic moments. In these instances, they rely on orchestral tracks, and while it does follow the scenery well, it also doesn't stand out. It's often quiet, soft, and easy to miss entirely. Overall, this episode was a significant drop in quality from the rest of the season. The story is boring, doesn't make a lot of sense, and is mostly filler. The cast isn't given much to do, and while they manage to appear competent, none of them stands out. The visuals are hard to stomach, boring, and aside from the overabundance of alien extras, had nothing to offer. The soundtrack works okay for the episode, but never stands out. They also don't try anything new. Literally every part of this episode, the new characters, the storylines, all of it is rehashed tropes. They don't even have the courtesy to do them well. 2 out of 10. Remember, these are just one man's thoughts on this episode. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. You have disappointed me for the last time.